computer. Apologies for that. So Caroline has just completed her PhD thesis on rebellious actors, performance styles and stardom in 60s British cinema at De Montfort in Leicester. During her PhD and during lockdown, she resumed her own actor training, looking at or engaging with kind of voice performance and Stanislavski and Grotowski-centred online courses at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama and advanced scene study and scene study at RADA as well. This built on her previous work as an actor and looking at theatre directing as well as film training. So she is somebody who's guided kind of her research into different types of performer training and post-war performance styles. And she's currently researching actors who are taking on multiple artistic roles like writing, directing and producing, and who perform for stage and screen in the UK, US and Europe, along with kind of work on performance styles in film noir and video essays and documentary outputs. So I'd like to hand over to Caroline, who's going to introduce our other speakers and crack on with the online roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question. It still says this meeting is being recorded okay, so that still is on my screen. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for joining us today. On the panel, we have Pamela Barnes, who is Senior Lecturer and Program Leader for BA Acting, BA Drama, and BA Drama combined at the University of Chester. Pamela is an academic and creative practitioner for stage and screen, specializing in directing, applied theatre, and actor training. She runs her own production company, which develops work for theatre and film, generating original performance pieces, including multidiscipline projects that utilize different performing arts methods, such as theatre, film, and exhibition work, alongside projects that involve art, music, and dance. She also engages with training and engagement strategies, as well as curating. And her research focuses on stage and screen performing arts as a tool for community engagement, and we will hear more about this today. And her publications include, for instance, co-creating, co-producing, and connecting museum practice today, published in the Curator, the Museum Journal, together with Gail McPherson. Then also with us today is Jason Kennedy, who is joining from New Zealand. So thank you very much for taking the time. He's a senior lecturer in art and design, as well as the curriculum and animation pathway leader at Auckland University of Technology. Jason is both an animator and actor, and an authority on training for virtual acting contexts, undertaking practice-led research on acting within performance capture and creating a taxonomy of performance modes among virtual actors. He's also a founding member of the International Animation and Motion Capture Group, which he can tell us more about during the session. And his publications include, for instance, Vector Ontologies, Framing Acting within a Motion Capture Context, published in the International Journal of Performing Arts and Digital Media in 2022. Also joining is Evie Stamatiou, who's a senior lecturer in acting for stage and screen at the University of East London. She is a practitioner researcher of actor training with particular interests in inclusive and innovative pedagogies. She has a PhD in actor training and direction from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama and the University of London. She's also the chair of the acting program at the Association for Theatre and Higher Education and a convener of the performer training focus group at the Theatre and Performance Research Association. And she's also the author of the monograph Bourdieu in the Studio, Decolonizing and Centering Actor Training Through Ludic Activism, which was published with Routledge in 2023. And at the moment, she's also co-organizing an online conference on Stanislavski and actor training for the screen, together with Sharon Marie Karnick, which will take place on the 31st of May. And she can also tell us more about that during the session. So thank you very much again for joining us. Before we start, is there anything that any of you would like to add to this short introduction? Do you feel that anything is missing? No problem. Okay, then we could start by beginning to talk about what is included in performance practice as well as actor training, which would cover its range, what we understand as traditional actor training and sort of like more recent developments, different types of actor training, including national differences.
This way.
I can't. Yes? Can you hear me?
No, it's all good. I think somebody was not on mute, but they muted themselves now.
Oh,
so
sorry. Sorry. So yes, so different types of actor training, including national differences, especially between the UK, New Zealand, and potentially the US, Europe, Asia, etc., and how these shape professional performance on and off screen. So we could start with first, what is performance practice and what is its range? So anyone wants to jump in?
I think it's going to be very much dependent on the background question, right?
So from
the background that
from
I come
your
from,
own background.
Yeah. You know, the background that I come from is going to be most likely very different to everybody else here because I'm dealing primarily with people who are training for motion capture, training for acting in video games, training for acting in green screen environments where things don't really exist, and even just training for acting in for animation to be able to guide the animation as well, and the range of skills that are required for these areas. From my side, if I were to summarize it, the kind of the core points of difference is if the tradition on screen, for instance, has progressively moved into you know, a very sort of mind over body kind of aspect. It's the reverse on our side, because everything that we do has to be conveyed and communicated through the body. And so we have to be very conscious of the skeleton. If you can't get it to, if you can't get the action, if you can't get the emotion, or you can't get the intention to be readable in your skeleton, essentially, then it's not going to appear. It's not going to be part of the overall performance. And it can be a big struggle, obviously, for people who come at it from different traditions, who may be used to being able to rely just their face or just the close-up. Just a tiny little bit from my side, but happy to expand more, so I'll open it up to everybody else as well.
Thank you. Where we will return to that. Evie or Pamela?
Yeah, okay, I'll go next. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm looking at performance practice with two hats at the moment. Research-wise, I'm working with community groups and looking at how I can use, you know, their performance for screen through docudrama as such at the moment, which is an interesting medium. I think coming really to the forefront at the moment with things that we're seeing on screen currently with the post office scandal, you know, docudrama and others that have been on. And I think the interesting thing there is they're coming from their real life experience, and there's a difference between when we're looking at community, you know, participants who work with research and want to be part of that acting and performance, then they're coming with that lived experience that's already there. And there's a difference between when we're looking at that and then when I take that lived experience and apply that to my actors. So I take a script that has been developed from docudrama and those community groups performing, and I apply that to my screen actors that I teach, and that conversation around authorship You know, whose story are you telling? How are you telling it? And what is the importance of that? And understanding that both mind, body, and narrative storytelling ways. I think that, you know, we still draw from Stanislavski techniques and other practitioners to build our characters, no matter what format it is that we're working in. But I think that there's a change in what I've seen, particularly moving a little bit more towards real people, real characters. And we're sometimes looking on the kind of reality TV is kind of hitting home with this a lot as well. So I think there's something in with actor training nowadays, dependent on where you come in with it. It depends on the person's background and what they want for their kind of career. Practice-wise, the techniques are still the same. How are you getting the people that are wanting to, you know, perform in front of the screen to really think about character? And physicality is an interesting one, Jason, what you're saying here, because I think that particularly, and I know it will come later on from COVID, I think there's been a difference with actors when it comes to movement and physicality post-COVID, but I'll leave that there for now.
Abby?
Yeah, for me, performance really became this thing that I felt I needed to define, to communicate with the students as they chose to develop as actors. And there are many backgrounds and layers about our performances. What I find most useful when we're talking about screen performance and acting is that performance is what we see the actor doing with their body and their voice. And in terms of technique is how the actor is also using their imagination. And then it becomes the performance score coming from, the physical score coming from, you know, Stanislavski kind of writing and understanding of what performance is. But really all these years of making this effort to really not discuss as performance, no scripts, no media, nothing, just focus on the actor. So for me, performance is just the human and what they are doing within characterization.
Thank you very much. I think we can actually continue with what all of you have already addressed, sort of like the acting within different sort of like contexts and sort of like shifts in sort of like training / teaching methods, as well as sort of like also the focus on physicality in those different sort of like contexts, sort of like either acting for virtual sort of like dimensions where you don't have a scene partner, you have to imagine everything and challenges involved sort of like with that, then sort of like the documentary connection, as well as sort of like then how we still rely on Stanislavski as others, and how nonetheless we have the need to adapt it to the shifting sort of like contexts.
If I bring it back to what I was talking about earlier, within the motion capture and virtual performance side of things, the thing we have to keep in mind, which is very unique to this style of acting, is that the performer at any one time is almost always not the sole creator of the performance. And so if you are somebody who is brought in to, you know, do a motion capture role, your performance at that moment in time is being captured. It's being digitized into basically a cloud of various points in space that then drive an animated character. But there is so much work that goes on from the animation side to tweak, to refine, to add, remove, things like that, that by the time you get to the performance that you see on screen, it has gone through many, many hands, and you can no longer say that it's just the product of a single person. which can be a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of actors who want to claim ownership over their performance to be able to grasp. And obviously that's been an issue in terms of being able to award performance in the virtual sector in the same way that we do it in the sort of live action sector. But it's not just that your performance may be tweaked by some animators. It's also that multiple people may be contributing performance, physical performance, acted performance to the same role. Somebody who is brought in to do various physicalities that the person who is doing or we call those locomotions, that somebody who is brought in to do like the hero shots and things like that, the cinematic shots, would be a different actor. And you've got somebody who's coming in who's 20 years old and has the perfect body to be able to manage all those locomotions, and they're doing 200 takes in a day, versus somebody who is brought in and it's like watching Beowulf when you have an actor who is certainly not the physique of Beowulf playing Beowulf, right? So there is the what performance becomes within the virtual side of acting is quite different to the way that we've conceived of it, up through, I would say, to the end of the 2000s at least, or sorry, to the end of the 90s at least. And I'm sure that there was a thread I was going for with this that now that I've been talking, I have completely forgotten where I started.
Performance practice in different contexts and the ways it has been evolving. So you're doing fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to it again. I'll open it up to somebody else now.
Yes, Pamela?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think that when we look at, performance training, I think as kind of said, it's one of those where there are lots of different aspects of training. It's not just physical, it's vocal, it's character background work, it's understanding aims, objectives, super objectives, all of these kinds of elements. But again, I suppose the argument would be is that the actor prepares as such, but the actor also does have, as Jason said, even in virtual, we may have actual actors that do their work and are physically ready and vocally ready, but they still require also the director, the person that's lighting them. If they're doing stage or screen, they have a team of people around them. I suppose there's a certain element there where if somebody has taken on a character who is, let's say, performing the Queen, they've had vocal coaching, they've had coaching to do with physicality and all of these kinds of things. And so I suppose the question there is, with all the levels of training, is it that individual that's purely created character? Is it a wider team? It's not just it's team, really, isn't it, when it comes down to it? But I think that there's something in that learning, in that, what I suppose people would say, believability. Is the person present? Are they believable, whether that's virtually, whether that's on screen, whether it's on stage? Are they in it as an actor? Do they believe it to then be able to perform it? I think there's a question there in that tangibility that really is a kind of selling point there for audiences. If our actors aren't fully believable, you could put a Hollywood actor on screen. If the Hollywood actor isn't 100% in that, is that where we say that person's not Oscar winning? If that Hollywood actor is not trained, mindful of physicality, vocal technique, really mindful of character, do we believe them? And I think that really there's something in the requirement of having this full rounded training. There's a difference between the students that I teach for stage and screen and the people that I work with in the community. There's different levels of performance that I expect to come from these kinds of performances. And there's a reason why we require the training, full rounded training, which I'm sure Effie's gonna comment on now, you know, for performances that we want to see that are fulfilling. I think that's probably true of Jason, but in different ways as well for you know, yeah, different means.
Thank you very much. Effie?
Yeah, I think that this is the idea of what traditional training is. It's, you know, a well-trained body, well-trained voice, and then characterization and imagination is something that comes from a script, from a direction in collaboration with other things. What I found in my experience, and it's a bit, I've rocked the boat in many institutions, and luckily as years pass, things that 10 years ago I would say, no, I'm not doing the Yiddish accent because I think it's offensive. And I was like, what are you talking about? The voice department is doing this. 10 years later, nobody's doing the Yiddish accent, Fiddler on the Roof, because it's common understanding that it is offensive. What I found for the screen, and then it has to do with who you work. My students, where I was going, they wanted to be on Netflix. They wanted to be on media. As an actor, I was seeing more employability, especially for people like myself, right? I'm Greek, and this accent just won't go. So I need a medium that is going to embrace the full of me, that is not going to try to battle, try to shape me into something that I'm not. And I don't know if you watched Sly, the documentary biography of Sylvester Stallone, which is fascinating. I totally recommend it. And he says at some point, you know what? If you look like me, don't go and do Shakespeare. Go with your acting strengths. And I feel that he's indeed, I mean, usually when I discuss with students, I speak about Phoebe Waller-Bridge and how she created her own performance, creating a piece that meant something to her and then taking it to other media. But actually, Sylvester Stallone has done it a long time ago. I mean, he out of nowhere, he became this super celebrity, and it's because he loved himself. So for me, preparation, I was listening to an interview of Julianne Moore about May in December, the film, right? There were no directors, there's no team. She just showed up on set. I just showed up on set for the BBC when I was filming something with people that are regulars in a series. And I just showed up and I was expected to do the work. So really all the preparation for screen media is usually done in isolation. And I feel the only thing we can do as actors is love who we are and embrace our, natural expressive means and try to behave as much as possible in front of the camera and make choices that are meaningful, because and to me that's the idea, that you are truthful, and that's believable, that you said, Pamela, if something chimes with you. And when we are training actors, I feel it's our job to really let students engage with a lot of different characters. I don't believe in full mounted productions. I know it's the traditional way of doing it in the UK because of the theatre history. In the US, it's the way to go for the theatre departments, the seasons and all that. But again, this is taking care of the genre and the film rather than the human that is going to go out and audition. Because as we don't get anyone to be the main character from Citizen Kane in a fully filmed production, why do we need someone to be King Lear? Like, why do we need a 22-year-old be King Lear? What is going to offer to them in a fully mounted production when people lie to you, people direct you, people make decisions about you, but they're doing the job for the media. And you are taking along the way things that amateurs take anyway. So why do training schools if people can just go to an amateur group and be in one production after the other with amazing directors? I mean, the best directors in the industry go and direct amateur shows. So I think, and again, for me, it's evolving, and it has to do with what the students want, but also where the industry goes. But the more this happens, the more I see because I come from performing arts, but I found myself really trying to push draw the whole field towards media more, because that's the students that I've trained 15 years ago. That's where I might see them do work and possibly have sustainable careers as actors.
Do you
Thank
mind
you
if
very
I just add on to that, Caroline? Oh, sorry.
Absolutely. No, you can always just add on. So
yeah, it was just to say, I think you make a really, really good point when we're looking at employability nowadays. And that's something that, yes, I think in higher education, there's a certain selling point where students want to come and they want to do an end of year show. But I think what I find more fruitful is that when students are doing different scene work, short scene work, being able to learn scripts fast, being able to develop scripts, being able to really push where their characters are, what kind of characters they can play, what kind of characters they struggle with, because I think that the more opportunities they have to engage, the more they find the feet with the characters that work for them, and they can, they can jump into easily or quickly, and they find the characters that they can't. I think that as well with nowadays, with more opportunities for voice work, Netflix, Prime, Disney, all the rest of the streaming and Sky and everything else that we have, I think that employability wise, it's unfortunate, when I was at a conference last week for theatre, and there was a lot of conversation around lack of funding in theatre and all this, that and the other, whereas screen seems to be the way now where a lot of students want to come and want to train more than theatre just now, because they see more employability. And there is, as Jason said, performance students can go into screen looking at game and CGI and all this kinds of things. They can also go and do film, TV, lots of different variations. So I think employability wise, I think traditional training has its grounding, and we're not forgetting that. But I do agree that when we have to move forward with this now, it's not necessarily that we are training actors purely for theatre. A lot of actors will just stay in screen now.
thank you very much.
I
And
can
also
build on-
voice actors as well.
Yeah.
I can
yes.
build on what you both just spoken about, Pamela and Evie. With the virtual sort of performance background, one of the things that they often say about motion capture is that you have your head in film and your body in theater, and the idea that you are trying to be able to have a performance that reads in a believable fashion that will be captured in the way that you would be captured in a close-up, but that your body is always readable and expressive, and something that somebody in the back seats of the theater would be able to understand. And of course, the thing with being in performance capture is that you have to be your character 100% of the time, because you're not, and through your entire body 100% of the time. You don't have the luxury of a mid shot or a close up or anything. It's always full capture. So any moment in which you slip up and stop participating in the scene and stop reacting, that is very visible in the result that comes out of it. Evie, you had mentioned about with your accent, it was a place where you found a barrier, and that you have to create your own path. And I definitely understand that as well, living in a place where the Kiwi accent is damn difficult to do, especially if you're coming from the US originally. It's like the opposite of what you learn. Anyway, with virtual performance, what I really love about it is that it is a very democratic or democratized form of performance in many ways. Hollywood tends to favor beautiful people, or at least people with particular looks, right? But the vast majority of people in acting classes who have tremendous talent are average, right? I mean, if we're just being honest, we're all average people. And that is a barrier for that talent to get out there and be used in ways that it's not going to naturally be seen as commercial. But it doesn't matter what you look like if you're playing, if you're doing a virtual performance and your body is being captured as the source of the performance. It doesn't matter what you look like, so long as your physiology is not somehow completely abnormally different to what your character is. And you can play characters you would never be able to do on screen. You can play all kinds of fantastic non-human characters and do several of them in the same day, and play against yourself. It's a really weird environment, my side of things. But what it does do is it provides opportunities for actors who, if they feel that they've been pigeonholed or pigeonholed into a various, theatrical background or screen background or TV versus film, etc. It is challenging for people coming from different backgrounds to make sure that they can work in a way that is very expressive for the virtual performance side of things. But it does provide opportunities that go beyond just somebody's human physiology into their core performance ability.
And that can be very liberating in a creative way. Thank you very much. I just really actually quickly wanted to add to Evie. I think your Sylvester Stallone reference is actually very helpful, because what he did, that he sort of like created his own roles and his own content, knowing that he would otherwise always be pigeonholed and sort of like typecast, is exactly what is needed for performer training today, and also the actor of today, that you need to be more in charge of sort of like navigating your artistic and professional journey. So I think that really sort of like helps that, to reference one example of somebody who didn't give up, who basically turned all of that adversity into something creative, and sort of like overcame all of those sort of like challenges. And I think we can further expand on sort of like the turn towards sort of like performance practice within a sort of like media context, and sort of like different kind of sort of like screen media. And I think you all addressed very well how basically performance practice has become way more complex, not just what you have to do as a performer, or the sort of like student has to sort of like learn, but also the kind of external help you then kind of like need on the job, with sort of like voice coach, dialect, accent coach, movement coach, etc. So it really becomes much harder to say this is sort of like my performance, to claim any kind of authorship, because it's actually teamwork, because you wouldn't really be able to do it by yourself. Not, I mean, to that level.
There is so much in the in sort of the real expensive film industry, where we have these blockbuster $200 million films, that the performance is so heavily planned out before filming begins that the producers aren't necessarily looking for a tremendous amount of discovery along the way, because they have to
think
make
about
sure
the
that
budget.
Yeah, I mean, you have to also, if you have all these amazing effects and such that are going around, it has to fit within a certain amount of time on screen. The actors have to be able to hit particular marks, have to be able to look in the right place, have to be able to give the performance. And they want a charismatic actor who can lift a script that is maybe not really that great of a script, but sounds a lot better when a good actor, when filtered through a good actor. But there isn't, I feel, as much of a desire to let the actors play, to find a performance as perhaps we may have seen in earlier decades. Because now it's very much, well, this is a product.
Yeah.
And that's not the case in all films, but in the ones that are going to be $50 million plus, absolutely it is. And there's a huge industry in planning all that stuff out before filming even begins.
But I think, you know, what is really exciting about today's, technological possibilities, the actor can prepare. The actor can use the camera, as I do now, and try things out and have different options, and then go on set with their own agenda, trying to get the option they feel is their best across in that kind of scenario, and also adapting to everything else. And I feel that no matter what happens, when it's, quite on set, everybody's just focuses on the actor and how the actor can charm the people who are there. And for me, the more they don't care about anything technical, but just behave, like charm the camera, then that is going to work, because in the end of the day, that's what you connect with. And it doesn't really matter how people look. Of course, if somebody has good looks, it has a particular effect without as much work as a different actor needs in terms of standing out. But again, I'm thinking of some of my favorite actors. I don't think they were there because of their looks. Of course, we're in love with them now because they're great actors, though. Not because they were models, they weren't models. And again, this has to do with characters. For example, for women, it was just one-dimensional characters written for them, the pretty women, so they just needed pretty women. And she didn't need to do much in terms of performance because there was no opportunities for her. And that's why we see, the Oscar-winning performances. Who are the people who get them? Is it the pretty people who get them? Or, or is it people who are the good actors that take ownership of those opportunities to do that? And I say it with all students. And it takes some time for, like this year, because I always give a lot of scripts. And there was this one student, I was thinking, did I make a mistake? Was not... And then suddenly, not with scripted work. So in the class that he's doing the Mike Lee method, where they are creating their own characters and developing, he was outstanding. And I thought none of the scripted work that I offered worked for him. But this, and for Stallone, that's the amazing thing. And that's why I feel people need, because he had the power to try himself in other characters. He did not want to be typecast as the thug, as is the kind of character he was getting before. But creating Rocky, he also created a type that was a bit more complex and a thug, as he also said. He failed in so many other films just to do Rambo that really worked again, which is so it's about embracing yourself as a type, but your own unique type, and how it can be appealing to other people rather than what the other would put you in a box. Again, I've written an essay about second language users. Penelope Cruz talks about the dialect coach as a torture. It is a torture. People who write about Vicky Cristina Barcelona, they say the real truthful moments is when she's having this quarrel in her native language. So again, this comes to many actors might think, oh, I had the coach. I watched a play the other day at the West End with American accents. And even my partner, who is not from our industry, he thought, why did they have to American accents? It's theater. It's not a real room. Why do they, tell the story with your own accent and not try to think you did the job as an American, because you didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting that you both say about this. I think, that with the Hollywood thing, yes, we have the beautiful people, but there have been some really, really talented Oscar-winning people that haven't been the most beautiful people in the room. And also we can argue that I've seen films and TV shows where I've gone, that main character is not somebody that I would fancy, and by the end of it I might, and there's something about that character, there's something about the character. But it's interesting when we look. I also look at the Mike Lee method, even though Mike says that it's not a method that he uses, but it's a method. There's a book there, there's a method. And it's really interesting. I think this is kind of somewhat the difference between, you know, do we go traditional with scripting and this is the way it is? Because technically, as Jason said, you have a script, you go and work for something, you've got a budgeted amount of time. As an actor, you have to go on, do what you're told. How much freedom do you have? But therefore, then, you know, with Mike Lee, with improvisation, I find it for actor training in itself, I think it's a really useful tool to be able to have an actor that can improvise on screen. And stay in character. Difficult, really difficult to be able to keep thinking of what's happening in the scene, yet be truly living and being present at the same time. But we do have those, you know, we have students that want to purely do scripted only, that can only work through scripted only. But also, for me, for the types of students that we are sometimes now, you know, applying to universities and that kind of thing, having scripts aren't always helpful and the best for them, because maybe they have dyslexia or that kind of thing that doesn't stop them from learning a script, but they might find that improvisation's more helpful. And it's these kinds of ways and methods that are bringing in a new diversity into, I think, industry, along with the idea of, you know, indie movies aren't new, indie TV shows aren't new, but they're the ones where we find some of these, you know, broader characters, diversifying the characters that we see on screen. And we do see that little bit on soaps and that kind of thing as well on TV. But it's really interesting when we kind of look at, you know, what is it that our students really need? What is it for the future of whether, you know, screen? Who is it that we want to see? We want to see more diverse characters. We want to see more diverse stories. Love Sylvester Stallone's story and always have done. And this is where I say to people, you are not an actor. You are an actor. And what is your and? Because to be able to create those stories, then yeah, they do need to make their own one-person theatre show and take it to Edinburgh Fringe Festival, or they do need to be making their own short films where they're doing, or animation where they're doing voiceover and this kind of things. And that's where social media in the world has changed now, because the gatekeepers as such, where what was traditionally there, don't hold those gates as much anymore. You can be a kind of a master of your own fate now. The world's your oyster, but how much can you be self-producing? So not only are you performer training, you are learning how to film yourself. You are learning how to edit. You're learning how to do your socials to be able to put that out there as well. So I think our modern day actors are modern day actors, and it's what is there and.
Absolutely.
What you mentioned there about improvisation, I believe is the ability to improvise is the great equalizer for actors who want to distinguish themselves from everybody else. Because if you have somebody who comes in who uses a script as a crutch, excuse me, that person is obviously very limited, and they're not. And to me, the limitation is that they don't really understand the story that they're participating in. And what I find with students more and more as the longer that I teach, is there is year on year apparent to me less understanding of story in general, how story is structured, how story is performed, and just general facets that, I guess when I was younger, I presumed people just picked up by watching it. Maybe I don't know, maybe I was just a little bit more perceptive. But I find that I used to find my students to be a bit more perceptive, and now they are not aware. They watch so much, but they see without actually, or maybe I should say they look without seeing, right? And I think that the idea of being able to improvise means that you can participate in a world much larger than just the script. And that requires a very different level of awareness and preparation than what somebody who is just looking at the lines that are on the page. And for me, a very core element of what I need my animators to do, for instance, when they're creating reference performances that will guide their animation, is to just get comfortable in not knowing what it's going to be, but playing. And just play and be comfortable with that. They don't want to be actors. Honestly, that's not what their goal is. So it's a very different kind of type of performance. But they need to be able to improvise at its essential level. So techniques around that become quite important, I think.
Yeah, I feel, I think that from what both Pamela and Jason discussed about the idea of acting and, the other thing that you need to do and being this whole world that is beside the acting, I think it's what rocks the boat of traditional actor training. I think we need people that are more active in the real world. First of all, if we want to be realistic, there is very little chance people will be in somewhere rehearsing from 9 until 5 or something, these long hours. And in the course that I'm running, I'm very conscious about the limited contact time with the tutor. And it's more about even leave, go out there, get a job. You're in London. Most of these people are not from London. Go out there, get a job, observe. And from my perspective, and for the screen in particular, don't observe others. It's about observing yourself in these new environments. What do you see in you? What happens? How can this be used for different things? What works best? What feels best? And in terms of, for example, the kind of movement training, I think what works best is what people would do anyway. I have students that they love football. I have students that love going for the marathon. They're training for the marathon. I love students doing ballet, doing yoga. If it's something that is going to be sustainable for life, I see a point. The idea that, we do drama school and we have the warm-ups with very particular movement techniques for an hour every day, it's not something sustainable. You just keep the students. And from when I work at drama school, the students didn't even want to stay in the room and watch scene study with other people, but they were like, can I go learn my lines? They were in that place between 9 and 5, and then they had to go back and learn lines. They had zero time. And those people are 18-year-old, 19-year-old. What do they have to give to the character? And how do we help them understand that everything you do is useful for acting? Because in the end of the day, but again, it's a close-up, right? The close-up is not about seeing the full body, delivering an action from far away to the last row. The close-up is about see what's happening in the head of that human and how can they bring the whole experience with minimal expressive means. So acting, and for me, it's about just live life. Acting is always a side thing. Don't think about it too much. Don't think too much about breath. You're breathing anyway. You have a voice, you have a body. Bring it on. We need all the bodies. I got agents that tell me, you know what? We don't go to drama schools anymore because everybody sounds and moves the same. And you have, a range of people and we don't have repertoire theater anymore. People were originally trained like that for repertoire, that you were to have to do different characters of different eras and you would be the same actor. This doesn't happen anymore. You'd be lucky to do anything else than yourself ever in a professional context.
It's something I actually kind of want to ask everybody here. It carries on from what you were just mentioning about, when you're younger and you're coming into these roles, what do you have to offer in terms of, life experience, in terms of the gravitas that you can bring to the role, and then the notion of being an actor. And the thing that I find, I'm struggling with the students, and I know a lot of other people are, is a lack of perseverance. And so I'm curious, how that is impacting training from your various experience as well, because I think one of the ands that we have to add on now is actor and having perseverance, and how that what impact that has on the student's ability to take on the responsibility of an actor today.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you say that. We live in a world now, I think the students that are coming in more currently now, you know, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, the younger students, of course, there are more mature students that come back and work with us, but we live in a culture that's instant gratification, instantly well done. And in the UK as well, coming up through the curriculum, students are taught precisely what to do and then examined on precisely what to do. So therefore, I find when, you know, you're working with students in a higher education context, they want you to tell them precisely what to do so that they can do their assessment to have passed precisely what, you know, they should have done. And the room for individualism, it takes a lot of time. It's really hard work in 3 years to be able to broaden the outlook of students, to be able to really look at work, not just working to task, working to grander ideals of the task, individualizing their task as such. I think as well, the problem is we're living in an economy now where students can only just afford to come to university, you know, so they have to work generally quite a lot of the hours after university. So the days of having students wanting to come in for an extra day to rehearse for a whole day themselves doesn't seem to really be a thing. Why? Because you've got however many students in the class and they're all working at different times, so they can't find a time together when they can rehearse. So it becomes very individualized, which there's a certain amount where I kind of think for screen as an actor, you would be working on your script. If you've got a script and you're going, let's say, into a film, you get your script, you work on it yourself, you do all your scripts analysis and that kind of thing. You go and you do your table read, and then you would get into it, and you wouldn't have loads of rehearsal dependent on the type of, you know, screen work that you engaged with. But for the students, they don't understand that they need that time and that effort there. And I think that that's where you sort out the students that are going to maybe be resilient and fly in industry because perseverance is required. I think for screen, it's easier than it was to get into because, as I said earlier, there's more places to get work from. But it's still not as easy as just getting a job in an office, you know, not saying getting a job in an office is easy, but it's not as, you know, it's not as easy. So therefore, it's that resilience and that perseverance that the students need to have. And I think that there's the difference between graduate students who are going to come out the other end of training, whether it's training in higher education or whether it's any other form of training. Those are the individuals that are probably going to have a bit more of an in. I think also having the opportunity, I think I agree with what you said earlier, Every, about this traditional training, and we don't have people that are going into rep theatre. We don't have students that are necessarily going into that now. We have students that I've got a student that's now gone into being a stunt actor, because that was where he wanted to take his degree, because he wanted to be an actor and he wanted to be a stunt actor. Okay, how do we help you to materialize that? You know, maybe you've got students that want to be clown actors. So there are a lot of students that come out of my university at the end of third year who are a range of students and aren't just a cardboard cutout of the same student. And there's something in the industry having that diversity, students having that handle over their own training and where they want to take it, so that actually they have that passion and they want to be able to then go on and be resilient because we've not forced them into a certain carbon cutout.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Jason, the idea about perseverance. Yeah, and I think it reminds me, first of all, of how we were trained to be resilient, and we were trained the show must go on, and then COVID happened, and this is all out of the window. I watched Chichester Festival Theatre, a show with the artistic director reading of a script, a character, because people had called sick, and it was totally fine, because in the end of the day, theatre is a convention. I mean, for screen, it would be a massive financial disaster. Also, looking at who our students are, the more I look into it, the more it's people. My cohorts include people with learning difficulties, disabilities, mental health conditions. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think, and that's why Pamela's work is also going there, my work is going there. I think it has to do that. For me, the most acting contributes is outside of the industry, because it develops people. It gives them something. What I say to my students, even when they come to the interview, they're like, oh, but it's a difficult industry. What do you think? I say, well, if you can live without acting, you're better without it. Of course, there's no question. It's a very difficult industry. But us who go for it is because we have no other option. We just have to do it. And something happens within that. Like, for me, it was a massive relief when I told in 2020 to my agent, you know what, I'm done with acting. I don't need it anymore. And just other things. Wow. A massive burden off my shoulders. So I think that our students who don't continue to be actors is because they're done. It's done its job. Maybe after the first year and they withdraw, after the second year, maybe when they graduate, maybe after 10 years in the industry. Acting is a self-development process for the individual, and they get to learn themselves. I think our students are lucky because they come out with a degree and as more developed versions of themselves, making them resilient of everything. Because when you try to attend to a character, inevitably you attend to yourself. What is this character doing? What do I do? How do we do it together? And you discover ways of affecting your behavior, of making it what you want it to be, rather than losing control over it. So I think that we need to kind of redefine resilience within our industry, and especially within what we do. Because in the end of the day, in my deathbed, I will never regret having done acting. I'll regret a lot of other things. And I feel that for each actor, that's it. Even the fact that I have tried, it was enough for me to feel, okay, I've got from this life what I wanted.
Thank you very much. I think we can move on to the questions. Looking at the time.
Can I come in and ask a question there?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just partly thinking about time, just to make sure that we because I know Evie's
Exactly.
got to go kind of at that time, but I just want to kind of say thank you for a really, really interesting discussion that's thrown up so many bits that I have many, many questions of, and won't get to ask all of them really. I just wanted to start with one. It's clear that the very recent past has shifted lots of things, whether it's streaming, whether it's digital environments. And I just wanted to kind of rest on one that has been mentioned a bit, but you didn't kind of talk about a lot, which is post-COVID, COVID and post-COVID, and how has that kind of impacted on actor training, particularly, and actor education, I guess?
Well, the obvious one I think that we've all faced is the onus is now on the actor to be their own videographer, to be their own, you're producing self-tapes at home, so you have to be aware of how that's done, and you learn particular strategies for creating that. And I think that there is, you have to be comfortable with not getting any feedback at the same time. You have to be able to be your own director, review what you've created. Are you the kind of person who can only do 5 takes and now you're no longer useful? Or can you look at those 5 takes, see what can be improved, keep trying, keep finessing, give yourself enough time. And like you were mentioning, Evie, that people have all these jobs and responsibilities just to be able to survive, just to be able to support trying to be an actor. So post-COVID it's shifted a lot of the responsibility that other people had in the industry onto the actors themselves. And I mean, how people adapt to that is, I think, very much dependent on their on their access to certain technologies, on their access to time, on their ability to do reflective self-analysis. And yeah, I mean, that's I guess that's my main one. I'll open it up again.
I think for me, it has made actors self-sufficient. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that I've certainly found with my students that it's made them a bit more diverse in the way of writing and creating their own work, which I fully support. You know, there's so many actor directors out there, which it's wonderful. The one thing for me, the real struggle for me post-COVID was coming out of this landscape and going into a studio or out on location with students to film, and them honestly not performing from here down. And that has taken a lot of time. I think that's why right at the start, Jason, I don't know how you deal with this, but that's why I said right at the start, it's movement, it's physicality. Not that we always require it for everything that we do for screen, you know, Henry said about close-ups and that kind of thing. But there's something in only performing from here up. So I think that there was a lot of breaking backs with that. I think I'm still working with students on that, whether the connection between formal movement training is linking with the screen, you know, and actor training is I think another conversation in itself, you know, that linkage and as Every was saying, but I think that for me has been the difficult side of post-COVID. So pros and cons, I think there's pros and cons to it all.
I feel that the COVID and the post-COVID world is much friendlier for the screen actor, because it just invited a broader acceptance of not wasting people's time. So an audition before COVID, they would want me to go to the Spotlight, you know, studios in Soho, wait there with 30 people outside the room, and then go in and somebody screen my improvisation. They would give me 2 or 3 takes, and there'd be 15 people behind the cameras. Now they're going to invite a self-tape. I have all the time in my place to do as many takes as I want. I ask for advice. I'm happy with what I'm sending. And most importantly, I don't need to travel in town, and I don't need to lose a whole day of work. So it's much more flexible and kinder to me. Now, of course, as technology evolves, things fail and we have more expectations. I don't think that will be a problem for the younger generations. Like, I have some students, I can't go on my email. And I'm thinking, dudes, you're on TikTok, you have all the social media, you can't log into your university email. But I understand for all the generations to have your own self-tape, you know, to create your own voice-over studio. It might be a channel, but it's definitely friendlier. And again, screen actors, we do the work on our own. We don't need to be in rooms with a lot of people. They just distract us. Because the work is much more internal and much more grounded, and we just need to be in those spaces with a lot of buzz for particular times, not all the time.
Can I just add on to the back of that as well? I think it's actually opened up industry because of that. As you know, I'm up here in Chester in the north. My students don't always have to travel down to London. When I lived up in Scotland, it was a thing that students would have to travel down from Scotland. And I think that, you know, the world literally is your oyster now with that. So I do think that is a positive element, because, you know, you can apply for more work now, being able to digitally submit.
One thing that's kind of an unexpected element to doing the self-tapes is that if you audition for something and you don't get it, but you know that you did a really good audition, once that show comes out or movie comes out, it's fair game to include your self-taped audition in a show reel. So, you know, you have access to that performance that you would not have otherwise had with a casting agent. And I like that personally, because I feel like I have more ownership of my performance.
Thanks, that was really great. That, again, even kind of discussions coming out of it, but I'll leave kind of questions for other people now if they've got any.
I'll ask another question if there's no one. It was very interesting hearing what you were all saying, because it seems to me that there's like a fine balance between what Evie was saying before, especially, you know, this sort of like preparing in isolation before you go on screen, but also what Jason was saying in terms of, you know, a virtual environment where it's not just the actor, is like the animators and all the other people, like even, you know, the ones who put all the little dots on your face. So you're surrounded by a lot of people, and thinking about, you know, perhaps more traditional way of filming, you have people like the costume designer or the makeup artists who are really keen, perhaps allowing an actor and, you know, entering the character, feeling more into the character. So I was wondering, in the training programs, if there's like this element of collaboration, how do you balance that, and how do you prepare the students for what is going to be a set, or, you know, working on stage and so on? It's not just, you know, as you were saying on Zoom, it's a much more complex environment. So how do you prepare students for that?
I'm happy to go first if you want. So with my students, we work together with our TV and media students. So they're the ones that kind of come in and crew. That being said, my students do learn how to, from the offset, film, edit, and they crew for each other in that learning process of being able to do that within their screen acting modules. It means then that when they go up through the 3 years, they have a showcase module at the end where they can fully use, you know, 4K cameras, brilliant microphones, go out, film on location, use TV studios, which makes them multifunctional that way. They also have training in other modules that they do as well, where it's group work. So they continuously have to work in groups. So that collaboration, that idea of how you are having those conversations, how you are working with each other, what is it that the director does, or the assistant director, or, you know, what is it that the sound person's going to be doing, which gives them kind of a lived experience. So working in hubs is useful. I found, when it comes to training the actors and getting them used to, you know, what should be happening, as well as working with students that aren't on their degree, so that they're working with others and learning what it's like to be in a room where they don't particularly know the other people, but they have to listen to what's being said, or that kind of thing. So that works for what we do.
From my experience, what has worked with the students well is that when they always have options, should definitely have room for collaborations that are, you know, from my perspective, even for the industry, to go for real jobs, to go for short films, to go even for amateur projections if they want. There are other degrees, try to collaborate with other degrees. There are always opportunities. But at the same time, the time that is structured for them as a curriculum, what I've seen working more is just the focus on the actor. Even avoid, so for example, when I have agency in hiring staff, I avoid hiring people who call themselves directors. I hire actor trainers, because the director very often, even when I was a director, I started directing shows, I was worried about the product. Is the show's going to be good? Is it going to, you know, am I working well with all the creatives and all that? And the students were just bodies being lit. And for me, that's not the maximum agency for the actor. So I think it's about making it student-centered, not product-centered, not show-centered. That for me, it's the big challenge, and especially for theatre, that it has its own biases of. But that, you know, I've always had students who were given scripts to do Shakespeare and they didn't want to, they were like, I want to do this stand-up comedy, or I want to do this dialogue from online. And I had colleagues, no, that's not good enough. And I was thinking, why not? If that talks to the student, we're focusing on the acting, right? So to me, it's about options. Do you want to go out? And even for groups, I'm trying to leave it to them. Do you want to work with people? Do you want to do this? Of course, they'll have small tasks during class so they can test each other. They know the dynamics, because managing the politics of group work, if it's not decided among the students, it just misses the point of what this is about. If you don't feel okay working with some people, you shouldn't. Yes, but in the industry, well, even in the industry, after the Me Too movement, you say, no, thank you. And you just go if it's not for you. So I'm trying to really be kind and follow what's happening out there, which is constantly, are you good with that? Are you good with that? Are you good with that? And do your thing. You make your choices. This is what we offer.
Eleonora, I will try to answer your question, but I'm going to do it in a really roundabout way, because from what I do, the students who I primarily teach aren't actors. I mean, I also work with people who are learning performance capture and motion capture and things like that. But my day-to-day job is teaching animators how to animate, and or visual effects artists how to create visual effects, those sorts of things. And what will happen if we don't intervene is those students who don't have any acting background at all will film each other because they're who is available, and the results will be poor in terms of acting. So the encouragement that I give them and what I try to link them to are my acting contacts that I have from the acting groups that I participate in or worked with, the people that I know, who I try to offer it as an opportunity for both sides. For my animators, it's the opportunity of actually working with people who have performance ability. For the actors, now it's an opportunity to work in a visual effects production. Like, what is it like to work the green screen, or what is it like to work with motion capture, or things like that. And that way it's meant to be a bit of a win-win for both sides. And I think that if we're trying to figure out how do we incorporate those opportunities, sometimes that is not always only what we do in our program itself, but the linkages that we create between our program and other opportunities that may not naturally just sort of stand out to us, but there are people out there who can really use actors, who, you know, they may not be getting paid, but if it's sort of a handshake agreement that we're each getting something out of it, then that's usually fine if it's a learning process. And so I do recommend that, you know, if you are looking for opportunities for that would be good for your actors, to approach schools, other schools nearby that would be in the kind of space that I'm in, to see, hey, would your students be interested or benefit? I almost guarantee you that they're going to say yes.
Yeah, I'd add on from what Jason said, that my students work doing simulations for NHS, and they've worked with the police for doing police videos, you know, for crime and that kind of thing. So I think that there is definitely opportunity for work out with training, out in the world. A lot of actors would, you know, put themselves forward for doing commercial jobs such as that as well, which is very well paid, you know, not all of it is paid, but very well paid as well, and gives an opportunity for a bit of diversity around. They're still being character. They are still, you know, some of my students have been working with nutrition students, and they have to perform the roles of patients, and they have 2 A4 sides of paper, patient notes, you know, fictional paper, patient notes. So they have to know what character they're performing to be able to do a realistic performance for the students. So I think there's definitely plenty room for acting students to be able to get out in the world and have some lived experience, as Henry was saying before.
This is a really interesting area. It's just something that I was thinking of as you were talking about this. The main thing that we come back to is the value of performance and what the actors are able to do with that. One of the questions we didn't talk about here today was, what is the impact of AI, or what may be the impact of AI within our respective space? And there are so many things that AI can do or can try to do and will probably do better with time. But one of the things that I feel is going to still be a very difficult aspect for it to convince us that it's better at something than we are is believable human performance. It can probably approximate a lot of things fairly well, but I think that this is something that we are going to continue to see, that we need people who can perform for so many different avenues beyond just the stage and screen. Like you were saying, in a medical training scenario, in all kinds of types of performance that may not have a real world counterpart, you know, and we can imagine so many different possibilities. AI may be there to assist us, but I don't think that it's going to be our hardcore replacement. And there's a lot of resistance to it as well, rightly so. That being said, I'm going to be wrong probably about 85% of what I just said at some point. So we'll see. But I think that the notion of performance as our guiding goal is the thing that's going to save us too.
Just to kind of add in on that, and sorry to kind of come in as a voice again, it just sounds the importance then of a sense of the ecosystem, if you like, of training contexts, not just, you know, a black studio where you learn script or something like that, but the idea of different departments, you know, the university structure as a really important system, plus how this kind of feeds out into kind of medical training and other things like that. I think that's been a really interesting thing to kind of uncover, the kind of complex landscape that actor training kind of sits in now. And I thought, just really, this isn't a question, it's just an observation, partly because we're moving towards the end of this. The idea that what actor training seems to do, as brought out of your discussion, the idea that the most important thing is to kind of produce confident and resilient improvisers, is just, you know, how is it not an important thing to undertake kind of from that? That seems such a kind of important goal for people to produce in people. And back to your what you were saying about AI, Jason, you know, that can't be replicated, that kind of sense
That's
of it.
right. You can find so many applications for somebody who has a performance background. You know, the level of confidence that you can have walking into a room in front of a group of people, the confidence that you have from knowing that you can improvise in a situation, that you are not just going to suddenly fall apart, that you have that lived experience of working through the unknown and coming out the other side the better for it and not permanently damaged. I think that those kinds of skills are part of what is resilience as well. And it's interesting that performance can be one of our avenues toward building resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that in the UK at the moment, definitely motion capture is something that all acting programs want to offer. I'm not sure if, you know, we have so many fantastic techniques. You can't offer everything to the extent that somebody's going to be fully confident. But I feel that if for the screen actor, right, it's important to be able for them to be truthful actors at the end of this program. It's also important to have tried things and tested things so that can take them further. Because like Caroline, like you, I've done all this training with all these people from around the world to be a good actor. That's why I did that. And then from that, I just take little things that work for my class, because I don't, I didn't think I need 2 years of master training. I thought I need 2 exercises, basically. And for them, it's exactly that. Where do you want to go next? We've given you what are the avenues. You go, you be confident that you can fit everywhere, and don't listen to the narratives. Oh, this drama school, the other school. No, it's you, it's the individual. Sylvester Stallone hasn't trained anywhere prestigious, and he's the biggest you can possibly be. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I agree there. I think there's definitely something in, having opportunity, having individuals at the end of your acting training. I think it's really important now. And I agree. I think motion capture is definitely something, it's a conversation that I've had about, where are we going with actor training? Is it that, we need to be doing these more, I would say, not forward thinking. Jason will be like, it's not forward thinking, but forward thinking notions of actor training in that way now, rather than what we previously thought actor training should be, particularly with the digital world that we live in. We have even a lot of theatre performances that are streamed and that kind of thing now. So even my drama students who are theatre focused have an interest in knowing and learning some of what's happening with screen, because the world of theatre still has that digital medium that's sewing itself through it. So I think that there's definitely changes, some consideration to be had in actor training now in universities. Not what it was.
And by the way, just because you both mentioned about the desire to pursue motion capture as a possible thing, I'm going to plug a book that I have nothing to do with. But we can't really see that. It doesn't want it. Okay. Called Performing for Motion Capture, a guide for practitioners by John Dower and Pascal Langdale. I really recommend that you read this if that's an area that you want to go toward, because it will give you so much insight and so much grounding in terms of a lot of things I talked about today, and also goes into far much greater detail, and I think could be very useful to the students as well. It's a good read.
I'm just going to come back in and spotlight myself coming back this as well. I just want to make sure that we end on time kind of for this. Apologies if we didn't get to any questions that you would have had, but please get into contact with our panel if you do. I just want to say, I think it's been a really, really interesting roundtable. It will push me to get our website sorted out properly so that we can get the discussion kind of up there as well. I think it's been really kind of quite wonderful to pull together some threads and think about it, and to kind of, and the dynamic discussion you had was just excellent kind of from it. I'm really kind of grateful for your time, your thoughts, and kind of pathways forward even kind of through it. We've had a plug from Jason there on the book. Evie's got a conference coming up as well. Pamela, if there's anything you want to plug, go ahead. But yes, so yeah, thanks so much for it. I know Evie's got to go kind of at this point, but and thank you for Caroline for chairing it all kind of through that as well. Yeah, we want to kind of take these types of discussions forward into the SIG as well, so we will kind of bear this in mind and move forward with it. So I will officially draw it to a close. Audience can kind of move along if you want to, and if you need to, that's great as well. And I'll stop the recording now.